The often ignored black sheep of the ever-expanding Marvel Cinematic Universe was not that bad, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy Louis Leterrier's 2008 action follow-up, The Incredible Hulk. But right away, I could tell precisely why so many people skip over this entry and proceed to Iron Man 2. Which is a shame. This movie did a lot of things right, and chief among those good decisions was to adhere to standard Hollywood storytelling. The timestamps for each sequence can be found in the comment section if you'd like to watch along. Now, let's begin. We start, as always, with a focus on our protagonist, specifically their personality, their inner conflict, and their situation. The Hulk's origin is explained a la montage, including the attack on Betty Ross and the preceding fugitive manhunt. Then we land on Bruce Banner in self-imposed Brazilian exile. Next, we examine where, why, and how our protagonist exists in their world, with a focus on why they don't quite fit in. Bruce is a foreigner who is still figuring out the language, who works tirelessly to control his anger despite the bullying he receives from being an outsider, and is desperate to keep his blood from infecting anyone else. Then a brief event happens, one that's never happened before. It's destined to lead all the characters away from their status quo. A smear of Hulk blood escapes undetected, bound for America. Which leads us to examine the effect of that something new to the status quo, specifically what's different now and also what remains the same. Bruce can't help but to intervene, despite the danger of confrontation. Then we receive another scientific research montage. We move along to the discovery that things are less than ideal, or else we explore how badly things are. Both scenarios are common. General Ross Sherlock Holmes himself some actionable intel, then rallies the best mercenaries, headed by Emil Blonsky, while Mr. Blue needs the original data files to find a cure, and the mercenaries converge on Bruce's location. Next, our characters dedicate their effort to a specified goal, and this is always smaller in scope than what the third act will demand. Bruce evades the highly trained mercenaries with spry cleverness, and fights to keep the Hulk transformation in check for everyone's safety. Then we run through a brief checklist of the main story elements that we can expect during this journey. Everyday reasons to straight Hulk out, Bruce's desperate need to prevent it from happening, the uncontrolled chaos of the transformation, and guns and artillery that go pew pew. Which brings us to the brief event that launches our characters into the wild jungle of the second act. It's also called the oh shit moment. The Incredible Hulk, his cover blown, escapes into the night and disappears again down the road. Oh shit. We follow our characters as they learn the new rules and expectations of their journey. These are always distinct to the narrative at play. Blonsky grapples with the size and power of Bruce's transformation, while Bruce figures out his grand whereabouts after the frenzy. Then Blonsky seeks a do-over. Next, our characters showcase their ability to grow and progress, and this is typically an external or physical beat, rather than internal or emotional. Bruce cleans himself up as best he can, considering his homeless state, then ventures down the road in classic Hulk fashion to find the data files, while Blonsky signs on to be the General's next experiment. Then our characters face legitimate and understandable reasons to deviate from their stated convictions, agendas, or desires. Bruce infiltrates a college campus despite his fear of getting caught, then lurks close to Betty, greatly increasing his risk of detection, and even makes contact with his old life to help him move forward. We endure the anxiety as our characters face an escalation of problems and complications. Bruce circumvents security by disguising himself in plain view, and is haunted by the experiment that changed him. Yet the data files are missing from the database, forcing Bruce to abandon the campus and flee. But Betty hovers closer to Bruce than she realizes. Next, our characters evolve internally or emotionally, and they do this by using elements of the plot or story, which they've gathered and learned so far. Bruce accidentally steps into Betty's line of sight, which leads to the reunion he didn't think possible. Then, our journey-weary characters come to terms with their ongoing struggles. Moments and elements of the first act are used to gauge their progress. Betty hands over a hard copy of the Act 1 data files, but it doesn't cure Bruce of his Act 1 need to stay on the run. And General Ross revives the Act 1 experimentation that created this mess, which results in a brief event that strikes at our protagonist's core conflict. General Ross doubles the number of Hulk experiments in the world, the exact opposite of Bruce's mission. We receive needed answers alongside our characters, which relate to both their external journeys and their internal conflicts. Bruce walks into an ambush, despite his paranoid nature, then swallows the data to keep from losing it like he did his laptop. Next, our characters complete their smaller scope objective, yet discover that their victory is shallow or altogether meaningless without also completing a larger scope objective. Bruce manages to evade the US Army for a few, but he's quickly penned in and trapped. The Hulk breaks loose and runs to escape, but the military does everything it can to keep him contained and enraged. Then our characters face an existential conflict that wounds their sense of self, their worldly identity, or their physical journey. A roided-up Blonsky takes on a raged-out Bruce one-on-one. Then the army neutralizes the Hulk with sound cannons. But Betty's cries bring him back from the edge, and he keeps fighting. We celebrate with our protagonist in light of an undeniable win, which is always related to the rebirth in some way. Bruce saves Betty's life and takes her on the run with him, who quickly tames the Hulk with love and comfort, making him feel like he belongs. Next, our characters suffer a grand loss. This is always connected to their newfound inability to quit their journey. Blonsky isn't as defeated as it seemed, and he looks angrier than ever. And the existence of the Hulk makes the news, while Bruce and Betty remain blissfully unaware of the worsening situation. Then we experience a thematic freefall, as the main story elements are ramped up and thrown into upheaval. Bruce struggles with the emotional isolation of being on the run, and the physical isolation of his condition. Blonsky makes an impossible recovery straight into CGI, while Bruce and Betty work in tandem to get the data files to Mr. Blue, which forces us into a brief event that robs our protagonist of seemingly any hope of success. Bruce's email trips an alert at S.H.I.E.L.D., and Mr. Blue is immediately identified. We watch our characters realize that they cannot return to their first act selves, and they turn to face the larger scope objective. Mr. Blue reveals the limitations of his untested cure, while Blonsky begins his transformation into the Abomination. They carry through with the experiment despite the risks, and Betty calms the Hulk long enough for the transfusion to take effect. Next, our characters use the major swings of the story and their personal journeys to move towards the climax. The full weight of the military converges on Bruce's location, and he desperately pleads for Mr. Blue to end the experiments of his blood. Blonsky and Mr. Blue unite to further the experiments anyway. Then the Abomination attacks the city in the same way that Bruce feels he'll resort to. Then the final confrontation of our protagonist and characters against the antagonistic force plays out. The Hulk and the Abomination duke it out, with the city as their arena. General Ross joins Bruce's side and attacks Blonsky. Then the two angry monsters battle, with Betty in immediate danger, which culminates in a brief event where our protagonist finally, and oftentimes metaphorically, overcomes their place in the Act 1 status quo. Bruce uses his Hulk abilities for good instead of survival, finally revealing the humanity beneath his rage. We experience the direct aftermath of the climax. This can give our characters a moment to reflect on the situation, or else wind down the action with a coda. The Hulk and the Abomination duke it out as good versus evil, no longer just two experiments gone wrong. And Betty's cry pulls him back from the brink of villainy. Next, we touch base with additional characters, typically to contrast them against the new status quo. The general public tempers their fear and panic as Bruce tempers his rage. General Ross's greatest mistake is placed at his feet, and Betty keeps alive her love for Bruce. Then we conclude with a tight focus on our protagonist, specifically to contrast them against how we met them at the opening. Bruce now lives in Canadian isolation, where he finds peace and serenity without being treated like an outsider. Then Tony Stark pays a visit to General Ross to pitch a brand new trajectory for the Incredible Hulk. And there you have it. Louis Leterrier's 2008 action blockbuster, The Incredible Hulk, adheres perfectly to the 29-point story structure every step of the way. Despite its high-octane pace and on-the-move storytelling, it remains true to the format. Now, let's move on from a man who prefers a quiet life to a man who lives the dangerous life. Join me next time for Kwang Il-han's 2021 animated prequel, The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf. As always, thank you so much for your time. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, and consider commenting on and sharing this video to help the channel find its audience. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll talk at you next time.